It was a rain-soaked evening, the world outside blurred by the downpour, when I discovered the unthinkable, a 4K video recording on my wife's forgotten USB drive, capturing her in a moment of intimate betrayal. In that instant, every whispered promise and shared smile dissolved into bitter ash. The clarity of the evidence was brutal. Her reaction, the way she laughed off the camera's lens, revealed just how low she could sink. I knew then that my life would never be the same. I had always trusted her. Our marriage was built on quiet evenings spent discussing our future and shared dreams that we nurtured in our cozy home. I believed in loyalty and honesty, values that, I assumed, were the very core of our relationship. But as the days passed, small hints began to nag at me: a furtive glance at her phone, the nervous laughter during phone calls she claimed were just work-related, and unexplained absences that I chalked up to stress or busy schedules. I had reassured myself that every imperfection was normal in any relationship. Yet, deep down, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted, a seed that would soon grow into a truth too painful to ignore. One rainy night, as I rummaged through our shared desk for an old USB drive, I stumbled upon something I wasn't expecting. Nestled between bills and forgotten photos lay a small, unmarked drive. On a whim, I plugged it into my computer, and what flashed onto the screen made my heart freeze. In stunning 4K resolution was footage from our living room and, shockingly, from our private bedroom. The camera had recorded a candid moment that I was never meant to see: my wife, caught in the midst of an affair. The video didn't just capture her presence, it captured her demeanor, the subtle shift in her expression, the way she casually touched the man beside her, and, most damning of all, her reaction when the camera panned in unexpectedly. I watched in disbelief as the screen revealed every unspoken secret with crystal clarity. The video was raw, unscripted, and horrifyingly intimate. I saw the way she laughed, a laugh that was laced with careless abandon, as if she thought nothing of the world around her. Her eyes, once a haven of warmth and tenderness, now betrayed a glint of mischief and defiance. Every detail was recorded in stunning clarity: the gentle lighting, the soft ambient sound, the almost imperceptible tremor in her hand when she reached for a glass of wine. It was undeniable evidence, and in that moment, the life I believed in crumbled into shards of betrayal. I sat in stunned silence, my mind a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, and aching sorrow. The footage was so clear, so irrefutable, that it left no room for denial. I replayed the video over and over, trying to grasp every nuance: the way her smile faltered for just a split second when the camera caught her off guard, the fleeting moment when her eyes met the lens as if pleading for secrecy, and the casual nonchalance with which she continued her illicit embrace. I felt as though I were living a nightmare, one in which every moment of trust was exposed as a lie. The realization that my wife had not only cheated but had done so with an almost audacious disregard for our shared life was a shock that left me numb. I began to question every conversation, every missed detail that now reeked of deceit. Had I been too trusting? Had I ignored the subtle cues because I wanted to believe in the best of her? The painful truth was that her betrayal was not a momentary lapse but a calculated act, one that had been recorded in unforgiving 4K, leaving me with no escape from the harsh reality. In that dark moment, I knew that I had to confront this revelation head-on. The USB drive, with its silent testimony to her infidelity, became both my torment and my catalyst for action. I spent the rest of that night in a state of anguished introspection, my thoughts a cacophony of memories and questions. I reached for my journal and scribbled down every detail: the exact time the video had started, the background sounds that captured our home's ambience, and every minute reaction that betrayed her duplicity. The pages filled with words like betrayal, shattered trust, and irrevocable loss. Each word was a raw confession of the pain that now consumed me, a painful testament to the life that had been built on lies. As dawn crept over the horizon, I realized that I stood at the precipice of a new chapter, one defined not by the false promises of the past, but by the unyielding determination to reclaim my identity and rebuild my future. I knew that the coming days would be fraught with heartache and difficult decisions, but I also recognized that the truth, as devastating as it was, held the power to set me free. In that moment, I made a silent vow: I would no longer allow the shadows of her betrayal to dictate my life. I would gather every shred of evidence, confront her with the full measure of my pain, and force the world to see the reality that had been so carefully concealed. The journey ahead promised to be arduous, a path strewn with legal battles, emotional confrontations, and the painstaking process of healing. But as I stared at the vivid images on the screen, the evidence of her hidden life burned into my memory, I felt a spark of defiance ignite within me. I resolved that I would not be defined by her infidelity. Instead, I would harness the anguish to rebuild a life grounded in honesty, integrity, and a newfound strength that would carry me forward. With the evidence clutched tightly in my hand and the bitter taste of betrayal still lingering on my lips, I stepped away from the screen, leaving behind a life of carefully constructed lies. The 4K video was not just a record of a single moment, it was the unraveling of everything I had believed in. In that moment of heart-wrenching clarity, I knew that my future would be forged in the crucible of this betrayal, each tear, each pang of sorrow, each surge of anger a building block for a new beginning. As I closed my journal and looked out the window at the soft, early light of dawn, I felt both the heavy burden of loss and the fierce, unyielding determination to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The journey from shattered trust to self-reclamation had begun, and though the road ahead would be dark and uncertain, I was ready to step into the light of truth. The evidence of her infidelity, captured in all its brutal clarity, was a reminder that even the deepest wounds could be the catalyst for transformation. I stood there, resolute and alone, with the truth as my guide and my heart heavy yet unbreakable, a man determined to rewrite his story, to emerge stronger from the ruins of betrayal, and to reclaim a future built on the unwavering power of honesty. In the days following the moment I discovered the 4K footage, my life was immersed in an unrelenting tempest of raw emotion, a storm of disbelief, anger, and a grief so profound it threatened to paralyze me. Every waking hour was a struggle to come to terms with the undeniable evidence. My wife, the woman I had trusted with every piece of my heart, had not only cheated but had done so brazenly, captured in high-definition proof. I replayed that incriminating video over and over in my mind, the clarity of every detail, from the subtle shifts in her expression to the way her eyes lit up in secret conversation with her lover. It was as if the camera had peeled away the last vestiges of our shared life, exposing a truth so brutal I could hardly breathe. During those first few days, I withdrew into a bleak solitude. I stopped engaging in the routines that once filled our home with warmth and laughter. Instead, I spent long hours holed up in the study, surrounded by the echo of my own thoughts and the persistent hum of a computer screen displaying the damning video. I couldn't tear my eyes away, every frame of that footage seared itself into my memory, a relentless reminder of a betrayal that cut deeper than I ever thought possible. I found myself obsessively noting every detail, her tone, the glimmer of guilt that flickered across her eyes, even the body language that betrayed her pretense of innocence. All the while, I battled a tumultuous mix of emotions, the crushing sorrow of lost trust, a simmering anger that threatened to boil over, and a numbing sense of isolation that made me feel utterly alone. I began documenting everything. My journal became a sanctuary where I poured out the raw, unedited truth of my heartache. I wrote in jagged, furious lines, "I believed in you with every fiber of my being. I thought our love was built on honesty, but you've built your life on lies." Each sentence was an attempt to capture the disintegration of the dreams we had once shared, the quiet promises that now rang hollow. With each tear-stained page, I felt both the weight of my shattered past and the stirrings of a fierce resolve, an emerging determination that I would not let her betrayal define me. Even as I wallowed in grief, I knew that I had to find a way to reclaim my identity. The idea of confrontation began to take shape in my mind, growing louder with every sleepless night. I realized that the evidence, captured so brutally in 4K resolution, was not meant to be hidden away in the dark. It demanded to be confronted, to be forced into the light. I imagined the moment I would finally face her, a living confrontation where every pixel of that video, every detail of her deception, would be laid bare. My thoughts raced as I rehearsed in front of the mirror, my voice steadying as I practiced the questions that burned inside me. When did this all begin? Who is this man you've been with? How could you let our love, our family, fall apart so easily? Yet, even as my resolve hardened, doubts began to gnaw at me. Part of me, the part that had once known her so intimately, wanted to believe that there was an explanation, a desperate rationalization for what I had seen. I ruminated over our shared memories, wondering if there had been moments I had misinterpreted, if I had been too trusting, too willing to overlook the subtle signs of a life lived in parallel. In the quiet aftershock, I questioned whether forgiveness was still possible, or if the truth, so stark and unforgiving, left no room for reconciliation. The thought was as agonizing as it was inevitable. Once the facade crumbled, nothing would ever be the same. Days turned into a relentless cycle of introspection and preparation. I reached out to my closest friend, Jonathan, whose steady, no-nonsense advice had always grounded me in times of crisis. In a cramped, dimly lit diner on a rainy afternoon, I recounted every detail, the high-definition video, the unmistakable glances, the whispered conversations caught on camera. Jonathan listened intently, his expression darkening with each revelation. "You have every right to feel betrayed," he said, his voice low and measured. "It's time you face the truth head-on and reclaim your dignity. Don't let this be a wound that festers, let it be the catalyst for your rebirth." His words, delivered with a mix of empathy and hard-earned wisdom, resonated deeply with me, fueling the resolve that had been slowly building in my heart. With Jonathan's support echoing in my mind, I immersed myself in the painstaking task of gathering every possible piece of evidence. I combed through digital archives, meticulously organizing every screenshot, every timestamp, and every text message into a dossier that left no room for doubt. The process was excruciatingly slow. Each piece of data felt like a fresh cut, yet each one was also a step toward confronting the painful truth. I assembled a timeline that traced her secret life, mapping out the exact moments when she had been unfaithful, matching them with the digital breadcrumbs that confirmed my worst fears. Every entry in that timeline was a stark, unyielding declaration. The woman I had once trusted had betrayed me, and the evidence was as clear as day. As the dossier grew, so did my determination to confront her. I spent countless nights rehearsing in the solitude of our study, practicing my speech until the words etched themselves into my mind. I vowed that when I faced her, I would be unflinching, demanding answers without the mercy of excuses. "I deserve the truth," I repeated, my voice steady and unwavering. "I deserve to know why our marriage, built on shared dreams and promises, has crumbled because you chose to live a hidden life." Every time I spoke the words aloud, they filled me with a sense of empowerment, a promise that I was no longer a passive victim of deceit. Yet, even as I steeled myself for the confrontation, a part of me wrestled with the immense pain of loss. Memories of our happier times, those quiet evenings spent together, the laughter shared over simple dinners, loomed large in my mind, now tainted by the knowledge of betrayal. I recalled her soft smile, her warm touch, and felt the crushing weight of disillusionment. The thought that the person I had loved so deeply could harbor such a dark secret was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. I wrestled with the internal conflict between love and revulsion, between the longing for reconciliation and the burning need for retribution. In those moments, I realized that the truth, as devastating as it was, had liberated me from a web of lies. It was a painful clarity that forced me to confront not only her betrayal but also my own vulnerability in trusting without question. The atmosphere around me grew heavier with each passing day as the impending confrontation loomed closer. I drafted messages to her, each one a stark demand for an explanation, and scheduled a meeting that would force the truth into the light. I knew that once I presented the dossier, the unassailable evidence of her hidden affair, there would be no turning back. The confrontation would be the final severance of a bond that had been irreparably tainted by deception. One particularly stormy evening, as rain lashed against the window and the world outside was swallowed by darkness, I sat alone in the study for what felt like an eternity. I reread the pages of my journal, each entry a raw outpouring of the pain and fury that had consumed me. With every word, I felt a shift, a subtle transformation of my heart from one weighed down by betrayal to one burning with a resolve to reclaim my dignity. I knew that the path ahead would be fraught with painful emotions, legal battles, and the arduous process of rebuilding my life from the remnants of our shattered marriage. But I also knew that I had reached a point where silence was no longer an option. I had to let the truth be known, to expose the hidden secrets, and to demand accountability for the lies that had been so carefully spun. I finalized the dossier that night, every piece of evidence carefully organized and annotated, each detail a testament to the depth of her deception. I looked at the compiled pages with a mixture of sorrow and determination. This dossier was not merely a collection of proof, it was my declaration of independence, a statement that I would no longer be defined by her duplicity. The truth, as brutal as it was the only way to liberate myself from the chains of betrayal. With that unyielding resolve, I drafted a final message to her: "We need to talk. I have everything I need to know, and I deserve the truth." I hesitated only for a moment before sending it, aware that the simple message would shatter the fragile pretense that had kept us together for so long. The waiting was excruciating, each minute stretching into an eternity as I braced myself for the moment when our worlds would collide in a final, inevitable confrontation. In those final hours before the meeting, my mind was a maelstrom of anger, sorrow, and a fierce desire to reclaim my life. I revisited every memory, every missed signal, and each instance when her gaze had betrayed a secret. And as I did, I began to feel the weight of those wounds transform into the strength to rebuild. I realized that while the pain of her betrayal would never fully vanish, it would no longer hold me hostage. Instead, it would serve as the crucible through which I would forge a new beginning, a future built on the unassailable foundation of truth and self-respect. Now, as I sit here in the quiet before the storm, the dossier of evidence spread out before me like a map of betrayal, I feel a profound sense of both loss and empowerment. I know that the confrontation will be the hardest, most painful moment of my life, yet it is also the necessary catalyst for reclaiming my dignity. I am no longer the man who naively trusted, I am a man transformed by truth, ready to face her, expose the lies, and, in doing so, finally set my spirit free. I woke to a day that seemed both oppressively heavy and impossibly clear, a day when the weight of undeniable proof and her shattered trust left no room for pretense. As I sat in my quiet living room, the digital evidence of her betrayal still vivid in my mind, I felt the raw sting of each 4K image and every recorded moment that had exposed the depths of her deceit. The clarity was brutal, every frame confirmed that she had willingly chosen a path of infidelity, and her reaction to being caught was a final, crushing confirmation of how low she could go. In that moment, I understood that our shared past was nothing more than a mirage, a carefully constructed illusion that had evaporated under the relentless glare of truth. The confrontation with her had been swift and shattering. I had confronted her in our home that very evening, dossier in hand, the evidence spread out like a roadmap of betrayal. I still remember the look in her eyes, a cocktail of shock, denial, and then a bitter resignation that left me cold. I demanded answers. How could you let it come to this? What was more important than our vows? Her responses, a jumble of half-truths and hollow justifications, confirmed that the promises we'd once made were as empty as the spaces between the pixels of those 4K recordings. I realized in that moment that forgiveness was not an option. Her behavior had not been a fleeting mistake but a calculated plunge into a life of treachery. In the days that followed that earth-shattering confrontation, I embarked on a journey of reconstruction. The home that had once been a sanctuary for our shared dreams now felt like a mausoleum to lost promises. I found myself sifting through the debris of our once ideal life, trying to determine which pieces I could salvage and which I needed to discard. Every room carried echoes of happier times, the faded laughter in the kitchen, the lingering warmth of a family portrait on the mantel, but now they were tainted by the stain of betrayal. I spent long, agonizing hours in the study, the soft hum of the computer and the rhythmic patter of rain on the window providing a grim soundtrack as I documented every painful detail in my journal. I wrote of my anger, my sorrow, and, slowly, the emergence of a resolve that whispered of renewal. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky blazed with hues of crimson and gold, I took one final, resolute step toward reclaiming my future. I gathered every scrap of evidence, each image, every timestamp, every excruciating detail of her hidden life, and prepared to file for divorce. In the sterile light of the courthouse, I watched as our shared assets, memories, and dreams were systematically dismantled, each legal document a symbolic severance from the life I had once cherished. With every signature, I felt a piece of the betrayal lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a bitter, but necessary, sense of liberation. The legal proceedings were grueling, each session a stark reminder of the life that had been built on lies. I worked closely with a determined attorney who specialized in high-stakes divorce cases. Together, we pored over every detail, ensuring that the evidence of her duplicity was preserved not only as a record of our broken marriage but as an instrument of accountability. The courtroom became a battleground where I fought for every shared asset and every promise that had been broken. The process was both emotionally and mentally exhausting, yet each victory, however small, felt like a reclamation of my self-worth, a step toward rebuilding a future defined by honesty rather than deceit. Outside the courthouse, I began to rebuild my life one deliberate day at a time. I moved out of the house that had once been our shared haven, a house that now bore witness to a legacy of betrayal. I rented a modest apartment, a blank canvas on which I could paint a new beginning. The act of leaving that home was cathartic. It was as if I was shedding the layers of false hope and embracing the stark, unvarnished truth of my reality. I took solace in the idea that while I could never change the past, I could shape my future with every decision I made from that point on. I immersed myself in the simple rituals that had always given me comfort. Mornings began with long walks through the crisp air of early dawn, the rhythmic sound of my footsteps a steady reminder that I was moving forward, even if the journey was slow and painful. I returned to hobbies I had once loved, reading, writing, and even painting. Each brushstroke on a blank canvas became an act of defiance, a refusal to let the ghosts of betrayal dictate the colors of my future. I found that, as I created, the pain began to transform. What had once been a searing wound slowly became a source of strength, an emblem of the battles I had fought and survived. My private blog, initially a quiet refuge for my unfiltered emotions, soon blossomed into a vibrant forum where others shared their own stories of betrayal and healing. I wrote openly about the pain of discovering her infidelity in 4K clarity, the cold sting of each unspoken lie, and the long, arduous process of rebuilding my shattered identity. The responses from readers, raw, honest, and deeply empathetic, provided a collective chorus of support that made me feel less isolated in my struggle. Their stories, interwoven with mine, reinforced the truth that while betrayal might leave deep scars, it also had the power to forge new beginnings. As the months passed, I slowly began to see a shift within myself. The initial, overwhelming shock of her infidelity gave way to a steely resolve. I started setting new goals, both personal and professional, that aligned with the values I held dear. I delved into my work with renewed vigor, channeling my experiences into creative projects that reflected my journey from heartbreak to empowerment. Every presentation, every project completed, was a quiet testament to the fact that I was more than the sum of my past. I forged new connections with colleagues and mentors, people who appreciated honesty and integrity over pretense. With each small step, I rebuilt my confidence, piece by piece, until I felt ready to open myself up to the possibility of new, genuine relationships founded on the hard-won lessons of trust and self-respect. I also spent countless hours in therapy, confronting the raw emotions that the betrayal had unleashed. My counselor, a compassionate yet unflinching guide, helped me navigate the labyrinth of pain, teaching me that true healing was not about forgetting the past but about integrating the lessons of that past into a stronger, wiser self. "Your scars are your story," she told me one afternoon as we sat in her softly lit office. "They remind you of where you've been and how far you've come. Embrace them, but do not let them define you." Her words resonated with me, slowly replacing the bitterness with a quiet acceptance and a determination to move forward with integrity. The day of the final legal hearing came like a solemn march, a necessary step in severing the ties that bound me to a life built on deception. I walked into the courtroom with a calm resolve, the dossier of evidence clutched tightly in my hand. Every piece of proof was a reminder of the betrayal, but it was also a beacon of the truth I had reclaimed. The judge's words, though measured and clinical, marked the end of an era, the end of a marriage that had been irrevocably tarnished by lies. With the final decree signed, I felt a profound sense of closure, a release from the shackles of deceit. I was now free to rebuild my life from scratch, unburdened by the weight of a hidden past. The aftermath of that final legal battle was a time of profound transformation. I moved into a small, sunlit apartment that I could call my own, a space where every room was a blank canvas for my new beginning. I redecorated with purpose, choosing colors that spoke of hope and resilience. I filled the shelves with books on personal growth, hung art that reminded me of the beauty of transformation, and adorned my walls with photographs of moments that celebrated my own journey rather than the memories of what had been lost. Each decision was a step toward reclaiming my identity, a declaration that I was determined to create a life defined by authenticity and truth. In the quiet solitude of that new space, I began to write again, poetry, essays, and even short stories that captured the raw, unvarnished reality of my experiences. I poured my heart into every word, exploring the complex interplay of betrayal, forgiveness, and the indomitable power of self-reclamation. My writing became both therapy and a testament to my resilience, a way to transform the pain of the past into a guiding light for the future. As I shared my words on my blog, I received messages from readers who saw in my story echoes of their own struggles, voices that spoke of shared heartbreak and the hope of new beginnings. Their support, along with the honest reflection of my own journey, reinforced the conviction that I was on the right path, a path defined by the unyielding pursuit of truth and the courage to rebuild from the ruins of betrayal. Now, as I stand on the threshold of a future unburdened by deception, I reflect on the long, arduous journey that has brought me here. The wounds of betrayal still ache, and the memories of that fateful day, of the Bluetooth revelation that exposed a hidden affair, will forever be etched in my heart. But those scars are not a sign of defeat, they are the markers of a warrior who has fought through darkness and emerged stronger. I have reclaimed my dignity, rebuilt my life, and learned that even the deepest pain can serve as the foundation for profound transformation. I look out over the city from the balcony of my new home, the skyline shimmering in the soft light of dawn, and I feel a quiet, unyielding hope. Every sunrise is a promise that no matter how dark the past, there is always a new day, a new beginning waiting just beyond the horizon. I am no longer defined by the betrayal that once threatened to break me. Instead, I have become a man forged in the fires of deception, tempered by the lessons of trust and betrayal, and resolute in my determination to live a life of authenticity and self-respect. As I take my first steps into this uncharted future, I know there will be challenges ahead. The echoes of betrayal may resurface from time to time, and the scars, though healed, will always be there as reminders of what I endured. But I also know that I have the strength to overcome them, the wisdom to learn from them, and the resilience to forge ahead with an unbreakable spirit. I have learned that true freedom lies not in forgetting the past but in embracing it, in letting every painful memory fuel the fire of renewal. Today, I choose to celebrate my journey, the pain, the heartbreak, and the eventual triumph over deception. I choose to honor every tear that fell and every moment of despair, for they are the building blocks of my new life. I have reclaimed the narrative of my existence, and I stand ready to shape my future with the unwavering power of truth, integrity, and self-love. My heart beats with the promise of a life defined not by lies, but by the unyielding pursuit of a future where honesty reigns supreme and my worth is never again compromised. As I close this chapter and look toward the horizon, I do so with a profound sense of peace and an unshakable conviction that I am the architect of my own destiny. The betrayal that once threatened to break me has instead given me the strength to rebuild and transform my life into something far more beautiful, a life where every scar is a badge of honor, every challenge a stepping stone, and every day a testament to the unyielding power of the human spirit.